Hi, everyone. Welcome to our devotion for Thursday, April 1st. This is the day of the church year called Maundy Thursday, and there's also a worship service to go along with today, so I hope you have a chance to check that out. Maundy comes from the Latin word mandatum, which means commandment. And so this day is given its name because on this day, Jesus gave his disciples his commandment to love one another as Jesus loved them first. And so that's our commandment as well on this day. And we remember this day every year of Jesus's command that we love one another as Jesus loved us. Our devotion goes back to the crucifixion story, again in Mark 15. And so we'll read a little bit more out of that. It says, "It was 9 o'clock in the morning when they crucified Jesus. When it was noon, darkness came over the whole land until 3 in the afternoon. At 3 o'clock, Jesus cried out with a loud voice, 'Eloi, Eloi, lema sabachthani,' which means, 'My God, why have you forsaken me?'" And that's where we'll pause our reading for today. We'll pick it back up tomorrow. So remember, Jesus was arrested on the previous night, overnight, and he had all these trials going on overnight, which seems very odd. And early in the morning, he goes before Pilate. And so all of that is wrapped up by 9 o'clock in the morning, which is a translation of the way that they kept time. Remember, they didn't have clocks, watches like we did. The best they had was sundials, which only gave them like hours. So the way they kept time was a little different than the way we do, so we have to translate that for the way the story goes. So it's around 9 o'clock. It's around where the sun is up and the day has well begun. And the whole crucifixion happens just in those few words. Mark really assumes that you and I know what crucifixion is and means and does, that he doesn't have to describe it to us. Of course, his original readers would have been very familiar with this. This was used all through the Roman Empire as a means for punishing criminals, that people would have been very familiar with what crucifixion looked like. Crucifixion was that they would nail your arms onto a piece of wood and then attach that piece of wood to an upright beam and then hang you from that. They would usually drive the nails in between, not in your hand, right? Usually our pictures show the wound in the hand. Usually they would puncture in the forearm, because then the nail would rest in between the two bones of your arm. And that's how you were held up. And so actually the death by crucifixion was death by suffocation, because your chest would collapse in on itself and you wouldn't be able to breathe. And in order to pick yourself back up, you would have to pick yourself up by these nails in your arms, which of course is very painful, and you could only hold that up for so long before you had to sink back down. And on and on and on. And this would last for days. This could last for a long time. And everybody walking by would watch you slowly die. So it was a very terrible thing, very terrible event. Now we're told here, and actually all the Gospels agree on this, that when Jesus is crucified, this death doesn't last for very long. It doesn't last for days on end, right? At 9 o'clock, they crucified him. At noon, a darkness came over the land until 3. So for 3 hours, there was a darkness over the land. And at 3 o'clock, Jesus cries out. And then we're told that that's when he dies. These words that he cries out, "Eloi, Eloi, lema sabachthani," those are hard words to get out. I always struggle over them whenever I have to read this. It's in a different language, which is then why Mark has to translate it for us. And of course, it's the beginning of Psalm 22. My God, why have you forsaken me?" That here on the cross, Jesus, who we are told many times is the Son of God, is the representative of God in the world, here on the cross, Jesus feels abandoned by God. And of course, we look at this back and say, how does God feel abandoned by God? That how is this the place where God is absent if this is God hanging on the cross? And I think there's a deeper meaning to that in all the places where we think God is absent is the suffering God, is there with us in all of those times and in all of those places. And we saw that throughout this whole devotion series. All the devotions talked about, so many of the devotions, so many of the prayers talked about God's presence with us, even and maybe even especially in the times where we feel abandoned and forsaken and where we think God is absent. Those are the times when God is there. Not just in a polite with us, not just in a, oh, God feels this, but God is really there in all of those times and places. Let's conclude with our prayer. God of endless love, find us wherever we go, that we may know that your promise is true. Amen. And God bless you today.